Hello everyone, I'm Rosphere, and in this video, I want to talk a little bit about Warfronts and why they're so bad from a game design perspective. Before I get into that, I have a little announcement. I'm going out of town for a few days, about 14 days to be exact, and I won't be able to put out a video during that time. So there won't be anything new coming out of my channel for a little bit, but I will be back. Alright, now that I got that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about Warfronts and why they're just not that fun. And there's actually quite a few reasons for this, but number one is something I like to call in game design a great bad idea. So essentially what a great bad idea is when you have, for example, your friend comes to you and he's like, dude, I've got the best idea for a game. It's so cool. And he explains everything to you and you're like, oh man, that would be great. That'd be so cool. But if you actually go in to implement it, it's the worst game that's ever been made. And that's basically what happened with Warfronts, at least from an outsider looking in. That's what I see with Warfronts. So if you could put yourself into a Blizzard employee's shoes and you go to a game dev meeting where they're talking about game design for Battle for Azeroth, and somebody in the meeting, they get up to present their idea and they want to talk about Warcraft 3, 2, and 1 and how those games were a lot of fun. They reference back to recently there's this huge hype train for classic World of Warcraft and how nostalgic people have been about that recently, myself included. And they think they start talking about how it would be a good idea, or it could be a good idea, to implement a Warcraft 3-esque battleground that's PvE into World of Warcraft. And everybody's like, oh, that sounds like a cool idea. And people start throwing up their individual ideas and adding additional things to this idea originally. So it's like somebody raises their hand and it's like, oh, maybe we could have the players be the peons, where they're out collecting and fighting and they're in with the soldiers rather than the overlord, looking down on the battlefield controlling everything. And everyone's like, oh man, that'd be a lot of fun. That'd be so cool to do something like that. We should do it. And it ends up making it into the game. Now the main issue with that is it sounds really cool and sounds fun on paper, but in practice, it's not, because essentially what they've created is a MOBA without the heroes. The players are the minions in this scenario where you're going out and collecting lumber and things like that. You're not actually the hero class. You're not Garen in League of Legends or Pudge in Dota 2, where you're last hitting minions to gather the gold and stuff like that. You're one of the minions getting last hit. Moving on to my second reason why Warfronts aren't fun, and this one is one of the main tenets of game design, and that's the theory of unfun. And when I say that, it's when you build a game and you start testing it, you look at what's fun and what's unfun. And if you remove everything that is unfun, then all that should be left is fun. And by doing that, in theory, not always, but in theory, you create a good game. Now the reason why I bring up this idea of unfun in reference to Warfronts is it really feels like the developers who were working on Warfronts didn't test the game or didn't test Warfronts very much or at all, in that Warfronts are something that are obviously meant to be repeated over and over and over again. They're something that Blizzard wants us to do a lot. And the reason why that's a problem is I did a bunch of Warfronts and because I wanted the transmog gear. Now, I only had fun. Like the first time I did a Warfront, I was like, okay, I'm figuring things out. I kind of get what's going on. The second time it was like, I really understood what was going on. I went and gathered wood, gathered stone, and it was like, man, this really reminds me of Warcraft 3. It brought me back to those days when I was playing Warcraft 3 before World of Warcraft even came out. I was having a lot of fun. Now, the third time I did it, I was completely bored by the time I was done with it. I was like, no longer nostalgic. This isn't fun. Gathering the wood's not fun. Collecting the stone is not fun. killing the enemies to capture these areas are not fun. Nothing's changing. It's always the same. It's really boring, and that has a lot to do with the fact that it's PvE. So as a game developer, when you create content that's meant to be repeated, like Warfronts, where people are going to be doing them over and over and over, trying to farm out gear to get their alt upgraded, to get certain transmog pieces, whatever it may be, it needs to be fun not only the first time, the second time, the third time, but the 10th time, the 50th time, the 100th time. However many times you do it, the player needs to have fun every single time. And if there's nowhere for the player to go as far as skill advancement in these things, and the systems are so basic that a young child could do it without issue, then it's not going to be fun for somebody who's a little bit older and wants to do these, and may even feel like they need to do them because the gear upgrades are so good as far as item level. They're not itemized really well, but item level, it's good for gearing alts. Transmog, it's great for transmog. It has a lot of really cool stuff for both the Alliance and the Horde. So people feel like they need to do these. You need to give them not just a reason to do that content, but make it fun. And to make something repeated, or to make content that is meant to be repeated fun, it needs to be varied in some way. So talking about variation in gameplay brings me to my third point as to why Warfronts are not fun. And as I said, they're not fun because they're exactly the same every single time you do them. And when gameplay that's meant to be repeated is exactly the same every single time you do it, it gets more and more boring every single time you do it, to the point where you just don't want to do them anymore. And that's where I found myself very quickly within the first day of Warfronts being released. I think I did like 5 of them, and I was like, I can't do these anymore. I'm not having any fun. This is driving me insane. They're so boring. And the easiest way to add variation to gameplay is to add players. Now, if they were to take Warfronts, leave them exactly the same as they are now, the only difference is having a defending and an attacking side of players. So you can have the Alliance queue up as the defense, the Horde queue up as the attackers, or the Horde, when they're defending, queue up as the defense, and the Alliance queue up as the attackers, and create PvP scenarios where it's almost like a different kind of battleground. You don't have to put them into rated BGs or anything like that. They can have their own classification. And it would be a whole lot more fun because players are random. You don't know what other players are going to do all the time. And that creates organic variation in gameplay. It masks the fact that you're doing the exact same thing every single time. Now, I know, like, I've done hundreds, if not thousands, or more of Altrak Valley, or Arathi Basin, or even Warsong Gulch. And they're still fun. Every single time I do that, they're fun. And it's because it's never exactly the same. Even though Warsong Gulch, you're just capturing the flag. But it's fun every time, and it's because you're playing against other players. Now, if you create a massive battle where you're sort of fueling this NPC defense and NPC attack against each other, and you're more or less the most powerful of the group because you're the player, you're the quote-unquote hero, instantly Warfronts become a lot more fun. And you can increase the rewards even because it's player versus player, and if it's player versus player, both sides don't win every time. One side will win, the other side will lose, and the losing side won't gain anything, or as much. But right now, in Warfronts, you win every time, so it's nearly pointless, and that's another reason why they're not fun. So touching on the fact that it's really unlikely that you're going to lose a Warfront, as the Blizzard developer said, but everybody really knows we're not going to lose. It's practically impossible. You could probably win it with just one person putting effort into it. It's that easy. Now, the reason why this is weird to me is because it's essentially forced win trading. Now, the reason why I say that is because the Horde, we had it for 6 days or 7 days. The Horde had Warfronts for a week. And because it's impossible to lose, you win every single time. Now, then the Horde don't have it, the Alliance have it, and then they win every single time. So we're just going back and forth, trading wins. It's really weird to me that Blizzard would create a system that is this... I don't even know what to say about it, really. It's just unbelievably weird that they would create a system that feels like win trading. And the reason why things like this are bad is because it creates a scenario in which winning no longer feels good. So those are just a few reasons why I really dislike Warfronts. There are plenty of other reasons why I don't like them, and I find it really frustrating that Blizzard put valuable developer time into a project like this when it could have gone towards something else, creating more amazing dungeons for Mythic Plus, creating more raid bosses, more fun raid bosses, developing something else in the game. And as a developer myself, it's just really frustrating to see something like this happen, because you want what you're making to be fun. You don't want it to be boring. You don't want it to be something that's looked at as a failure. And I don't know. I really don't have anything else to say about that. Alright, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I had to say. Let me know what you guys think of Warfronts down in the comments below. What they did wrong. Maybe you think they did something right. Maybe something I said that I didn't like, you liked. Let me know what you think. I'll be streaming over on Twitch as soon as I get back from my road trip, and I will see you in the next video.